joining me over the phone now is Premier Doug Ford. Thank you very much, Premier, for taking the time today.
Well, James, thanks so much for having me on.
So we're going to get right into it because I know you are short on time here. So Premier, the first question I have is, how is the province assisting in providing and procuring more personal protective equipment? I know that is a big issue in most municipalities right now.
Yes, and I hear you loud and clear on that. We're just all over the world trying to procure as many level 2 surgical masks and then level 2 surgical gowns and N95 masks and gloves, and everyone in the world wants the same items. The good news is that we can manufacture anything right here in Ontario. We have some great companies that have stepped up in the auto part manufacturing arena that are worldwide companies, and they're putting their engineering might and their ingenuity behind making the ventilators and making the N95 masks right here in Ontario, so we don't have to rely on the rest of the world. We have shipments coming in on a daily basis from conventional and unconventional suppliers. We have about a little over 2 weeks supply. I'm kind of the belt and suspenders type of person in a crisis. I trust but verify. I went into the warehouse myself to take a look at the inventory with the Minister of Health and Minister of Finance. We saw the supplies there. We have to make sure that we get them out to all our frontline healthcare workers and our first responders as well. But we have a big shipment coming in from the federal government as well. They're buying around the world right now as we are. So it's all hands on deck, and we'll make sure that our frontline healthcare workers have the supplies they need. In saying all that, it is absolutely critical that we flatten the curve and slow the spread, and that goes back to following the protocol from the Chief Medical Officer that we have to continue on with the social distancing. And I know it's tough especially at Easter, having the whole family over, but we really recommend that you stick with immediate family and avoid getting out when you can. Just go out for your groceries and stay as close to home as possible.
So, Premier, there are concerns about this sort of lack of testing in Ontario. I know recently Ontario was cited as having the lowest per capita testing in Canada. What are the plans to increase that testing?
Well, I'll tell you, the biggest problem that we have faced is the fluid called reagent, and there's a swab that they test you with, and they put into this liquid called reagent. We were getting it from the U.S., and thanks to the Ministry of Health, their technicians there and their labs, they were able just in the last day or so come up with their own reagent material that we're getting expedited through Health Canada to get approvals on that. We've also got a purchase order for a company in Ottawa called Spartan. They have test kits that we can get immediate results. We've ordered 900,000 kits off them. They're getting approval again expedited through Health Canada. And if you look at any country that surges the population on testing, they get ahead of the curve, be it South Korea or Germany. They're the examples we want to follow. And we've ramped up the testing labs up to, I believe it's well over 33, and our goal is to get 70 labs through the private sector as well. So we're leaving no stone unturned on this. And we have the largest population in Ontario, and in Canada, I should say, with 14.5 million people, and it's a large region, but we're getting to every corner of this province.
So, Premier, municipal funding has been cited as one of the biggest concerns, especially in the Muskoka area. And I know everyone has their hand out right now. I know there's a lot of need. But what is the province looking to do to help with the municipal funding needs?
Well, I'll tell you what we're doing overall is we're focusing on making sure that we're deferring property tax payments for municipalities to make school boards by at least 90 days. The deferral will provide municipalities with the flexibility to turn and provide $1.8 billion in property tax deferrals to residents, as well as families that have children under 12. We're giving everyone $200 per child under 12. Anyone with a child with special needs is $250, and then we're doubling the gains payments for 194,000 low-income seniors, and putting $3.3 billion into the healthcare. And just to give you a couple examples, there's quite a few, but a couple of them is making sure that we put $1 billion dedicated to COVID-19. Make sure we have the contingency fund, $953 million for hospital sector, including $594 million to address capacity issues, $341 million for 1,000 additional acute care beds and 500 critical care beds. So there's a whole list, but we will not spare a penny to make sure that we protect the health and the well-being of the people of Ontario.
All right, Premier, now you recently made a request to cottagers to not come up to cottage country, to any type of cottage country, Muskoka especially, but it seems that request has fallen on deaf ears. So my question to you now is, what would you say to the people that have decided to make this, trepidous journey?
Well, number one, I recommend not to, because you're putting a burden on municipalities and Muskoka region as a whole. As simple as going into the grocery store and putting a burden on the back of grocery stores in the way that people from other regions, from urban areas, going up to cottage country and cleaning the shelves out. We don't have the capacity for the hospitals up there. If you see the spike up in Huntsville, that's my second home. We have a place in Port Sydney, and I haven't went up there because it's not fair to the local people that we're putting the additional stress on the system. So I can't stress it enough. If you're in Toronto, you're listening to this show, please just go back to Toronto, and we have the resources, the hospitals, and the supplies for you back in Toronto. You're really hurting your neighbors up there, and it's just not fair to the people up in cottage country.
And finally, Premier, you've recently stated that schools will be closed until early May. Now, in BC, the officials there are saying that this could be lasting well into June. So I'm just wondering about your comments, or what your thoughts are on that.
Sure, I know Quebec's following the May the 4th, but I won't hesitate to shut those schools down for the rest of the year. We're following the Chief Medical Officer of Health advice, and we'll see where we're at on May the 4th. I know May the 1st, the teachers are able to go in there and get the supplies they need, because nothing is more important than the health of our children, and we will not hesitate to shut it down for the rest of the year.
And Premier, I just have one last question for you, and this is more of a personal tone. I'm just curious, and I don't know how many people asked you, but how are you doing, and how is your family doing?
Well, I appreciate that, James. We're doing well, but I worry about the frontline healthcare workers and the grocery clerks, for example, that go in day after day to make sure we have food on our tables. I want to thank them and all the frontline folks. And we as I've said many times, we have an army behind us, the 14.5 million people of this great province. They're doing a great job. And James, I got to thank you. I want to thank you for your leadership. You're the voice of Muskoka, and people watch your show. And thank you for getting the message out. And the message is, make sure you, to the best of your ability, stay at home, self-isolate, practice social distancing, and only go out when you need groceries. So it's absolutely critical we get through the turbulent waters we're going to face in the next few weeks. But we will get through it. We're going to get through it. We're going to get through it together and come out stronger than ever before. But we have to follow the protocol of the Chief Medical Officer. I just can't stress it enough. It's absolutely critical.
Thank you very much, Premier, for taking the time.
Oh, well, thank you. And I just want to wish everyone up in the Muskoka region, God bless you. And again, we'll get through this, and everyone, once we get through it, we'll be up there enjoying the cottage country.